I always thought the worst day of my life had already happened. It was the day Lily lost her mother. My wife, Sarah, was everything that held our little world together. Cancer took her when Lily was only 9. I still remember the way my daughter held my hand at the funeral, her tiny fingers trembling, eyes too dry. She didn't cry until we were alone, and when she finally broke down in my arms, she whispered through sobs, "I'll be strong, Daddy, for you." And she was. Or so I believed. It's strange how betrayal doesn't come with sirens or flashing lights. It arrives quietly, sometimes with a smile, sometimes with a word like surprise. It was a Saturday, the kind of slow, peaceful morning I'd always treasured. The coffee was strong, the pancakes were burning slightly at the edges, just how I liked them, and Lily was home from her final semester of college. At least, that's what I thought. She sat across from me at the breakfast table in her pajamas, scrolling through her phone with one hand and sipping orange juice with the other. Her long dark hair was tied up messily, and for a moment, she looked like the little girl who used to build pillow forts in the living room. Then she set down her phone and looked at me, her eyes sparkling in a way I hadn't seen in years. "Dad," she said, "I have a surprise for you." I smiled. "Oh, what kind of surprise?" She pulled out a large white envelope from her tote bag and slid it across the table like it was a birthday card. My hands were still sticky with syrup, so I wiped them on a napkin before picking it up. My first thought, tickets. Maybe a vacation she planned. A graduation gift. A sweet gesture from the daughter I raised on bedtime stories and honesty. I opened it. At first, I couldn't process what I was looking at. The papers were heavy, legal. There were numbers, names, banks. Some had my name. Others had hers. At the bottom of one, my signature. Only it wasn't mine. Then the number hit me like a baseball bat to the ribs. 483 702.86. I stared at it for what felt like an hour. What is this? Lily took a long sip of juice. "So, okay, before you freak out." "Lily," I said, my voice suddenly raw. "What is this?" She shifted in her seat, brushing hair behind her ear. "It's just some stuff I had to handle. School, business stuff. I took out some loans. But it's all gonna work out. You don't have to worry. They're in your name, yeah, but it's temporary. Like a technicality." My hands went cold. "In my name? Yeah, I mean, look, Dad, it's not like I didn't plan to tell you. But I needed help, and you always said you'd do anything for me, right?" I stood up from the table. She flinched a little. "I don't understand," I said. "You forged my name?" "You what?" "You borrowed 400,000 using my identity?" "It's not like that," she said quickly, standing up too. "It's just paperwork. And I've already started this online business. It's going to take off soon. I just needed backing. You wouldn't have said yes if I asked. So," my voice cracked, "so you lied to me instead." She crossed her arms. "You don't understand how hard it is for people my age. No one gets ahead the old-fashioned way anymore. Everyone takes risks. I did what I had to do. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't one wrong click or a credit card left on a counter. This was planned, deliberate, meticulous. Why didn't you come to me?" I whispered. "Because you're too cautious. You always play it safe. You still live like we're broke." I didn't want to wait until I was 50 to have a life. I stared at her, trying to find my daughter in the person standing across from me. The girl who used to cry when I left for work. The girl who made me Father's Day cards out of construction paper and glitter. The girl who used to sleep on my chest when thunderstorms scared her. Now she was standing in my kitchen, telling me I was an obstacle she had to work around. I dropped the envelope on the table. "I need you to leave." "What?" "Seriously." "Now." But she scoffed. "Where am I supposed to go? You figured out how to steal $500,000. I'm sure you'll figure it out." Her mouth opened, but no words came. For the first time, I saw a flicker of fear behind her bravado. I walked past her, into the hallway, into the living room, anywhere but there. Behind me, I heard the front door open and slam shut. I sat in silence for hours. The sun shifted across the room. The clock ticked like it was mocking me. I picked up the envelope again, my fingers numb. There were over a dozen documents. Credit card applications, student loan requests, business startup paperwork. Some of the signatures were sloppy. Some were perfect forgeries. She had known exactly what she was doing. It wasn't desperation. It was entitlement. And I hadn't seen it. I'd been too busy trying to be her hero, her rock, her father. Instead, I'd raised someone who saw me as a resource, not a person. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Sarah. What would she have said? Would she have seen this coming? Would she have stopped it? Would she have blamed me? I sat alone in the dark, my chest hollow, my world suddenly unfamiliar. The worst part wasn't the money. It was the knowing that my daughter, the person I loved most in this world, had lied to me, used me, and felt justified in doing it. I was grieving again. But this time, it wasn't for my wife. This time, I was grieving the daughter I thought I had. I didn't get out of bed the next morning. Not because I was tired, but because I didn't know how to start my day in a world that suddenly felt fake. I stared at the ceiling as the morning light shifted through the blinds, painting stripes across the room like prison bars. My phone buzzed a few times. I ignored it. I didn't want to hear apologies. I didn't want to hear excuses. I didn't want to hear her voice. I didn't even know if I could ever speak to her again. By noon, I forced myself up and walked into the kitchen. The envelope still sat on the table. I hadn't touched it since the night before, but it sat there like a crime scene. I pulled on a pair of gloves from under the sink. Don't ask me why. Maybe it was symbolic, and opened every page one by one. Each paper was another punch to the gut. A credit card opened in my name, maxed out. A business loan for a non-existent startup. A parental guarantee on a private college tuition line. $180,000 by itself. She forged my signature so many times she got better at it. Some of the dates went back 2 years. 2 years. While she smiled at me over family dinners. While she asked for help with homework. While I paid for her textbooks and Uber rides, and thought I was still her rock. She had already started building her empire of lies. I opened my banking app, my stomach twisted. My credit score, once pristine, was shredded, below 500. Several collection notices, an overdraft fee. I hadn't seen a number that low since I was a kid sleeping in the back of my truck during the year after Sarah died. And then I saw it. My retirement account. The one Sarah and I had opened together when Lily was 3. She used to call it the dream jar. Wiped out. All of it? I felt something snap inside me. Not anger. Not yet. Just a death. Something I had protected and nurtured for decades was gone. And the person who stole it from me was someone I raised with my own 2 hands. I thought of calling her. Instead, I called the fraud department. They opened an investigation, took my statement, and said they'd need to file formal paperwork and possibly involve law enforcement. When the woman on the phone asked if I knew who might be responsible, I opened my mouth. But no sound came out. The word, my daughter, couldn't quite form on my tongue. I hung up. Then I sat on the floor with my back against the fridge, knees pulled to my chest, and I cried. Not the dignified, silent tears of a man who'd had a hard day, no. These were ugly, collapsing sobs. The kind that leave your throat raw and your soul hollow. Later that evening, I did what any father would do when he doesn't understand. I went looking for answers. I opened Lily's old laptop, which she had left in her bedroom drawer when she upgraded. It still booted up. The password was her old cat's name, Whiskers 17. I scrolled through her files, her browser history, her emails. What I found didn't make me feel better. There were invoices for products that didn't exist. Emails to shady-sounding business mentors. A chat log with someone named Jaden, talking about offshore accounts and crypto schemes. Another one with someone named Zara joking about how dads are just walking bank accounts with rules. I closed the laptop. Then I opened the photo album on her dresser. Pages of smiles, kindergarten drawings, stickers. Her mother's handwriting in the margins, Lily's First Steps 2003, Lily's Drawing of Daddy 2004. Lily says she wants to marry Daddy someday 2005. I turned the page. I don't know when exactly the shift happened. When the little girl with pigtails and an overbite became the woman who saw me not as a father, but as a financial obstacle. But somewhere along the way, something changed. I couldn't sleep that night. I stood by the window with a mug of cold coffee, staring out at the street, quiet neighborhood, sprinklers ticking, porch lights glowing. Everyone else's life seemed so intact. Mine was collapsing silently. It's not that I hadn't made sacrifices. God knows I did. After Sarah died, I worked 2 jobs, construction during the day, night shifts at a gas station. I packed her lunches, brushed her hair, cried alone when I missed school plays because I had to make rent. And now this. This was my reward. The next day, I met with a lawyer. Her name was Cassandra, and she was tough in a way I respected. She listened quietly as I laid it all out. Every paper, every signature, every red flag I missed. When I finished, she looked me in the eye. "This is identity theft, David. You can press charges." I hesitated. "She's my daughter. She also stole $400,000 from you. If she weren't your daughter, would this even be a question?" "No. There's your answer." She leaned forward. "If you don't hold her accountable, the system will treat her like a victim of circumstance. You'll never get your name back, your credit back, your future back, and she'll do it again. To someone else." I stared at the table. Cassandra pushed the paperwork toward me. "You don't have to decide today, but don't wait too long. Time matters." That night I went into the garage. I dug through a box I hadn't opened in years. Inside was a letter from Sarah, one she wrote for me the week before she passed. She said to open it. When I felt lost, my hands shook as I unfolded it. "My love, you are stronger than you believe, and you love harder than most. That's a gift and a curse. One day, you might have to make a choice you don't want to make, one that feels like betrayal. But sometimes doing the hard thing is love. The real kind. The kind that protects even when it hurts. Don't be afraid to let go if it means holding on to yourself. Always yours, Sarah." I folded the letter, and I knew what I had to do. The first time I saw my daughter's name on a court document, I wanted to look away. But I didn't. I had to face it. The reality of everything she had done, and what it meant for the life I thought I had. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about who she had become. I hired a private investigator named Marcus, a grizzled man with piercing eyes and a reputation for finding the truth, no matter how well it was buried. I handed him the envelope, the mess of documents, loan papers, emails, and told him to find out everything. A week later, Marcus sat across from me at the kitchen table, his face grave. "She's been running a shell company," he said. "A consulting firm that's been moving money offshore. The invoices are fake. No employees, no clients, no real services. Just a front to hide stolen funds." I closed my eyes and breathed deep. How did she get the loans? She had no collateral. "Your name was enough. You're a trusted man in the community. Banks didn't question it because of the signatures she forged. And the boyfriend?" Marcus hesitated. "Jaden. He's not just a boyfriend. He's a small-time criminal involved in fraud rings. He's been seen around her business addresses. I don't think it was just a coincidence." A cold weight settled in my chest. That night, I sat in the dark, replaying memories I'd long cherished. Lily's first steps, her first bike ride, the late night talks after her mother died. Was any of it real? Had I been so desperate to hold on to the happy moments that I ignored the warning signs? I remembered the times she came home late, a little too secretive about who she'd been with, the sudden financial emergencies she claimed. Car repairs, medical bills for friends, the texts I never saw, the calls I missed. And the growing distance between us that I'd mistaken for growing up. With Marcus's reports and Cassandra's legal advice, I started building a case. It wasn't easy. I had to balance my love for my daughter with the cold facts. Some nights, I wanted to pick up the phone and beg her to come home. Other nights, I wanted to scream at her for the mess she created. The hardest blow came when Marcus uncovered that one of the loans, over $50,000, was signed using my late wife's name. Sarah had been dead for 6 years. They forged her signature. I stared at the document so long my eyes blurred. The betrayal was deeper than I'd imagined. I thought about calling Lily. I rehearsed what I'd say. But every time I dialed, my hand trembled and I hung up, because I was afraid of what I'd hear. One evening, I found myself sitting in Lily's old room. The walls still held posters of her favorite bands, photos from family vacations, her old stuffed bear sitting on the bed. I picked up a letter she wrote to her mother when she was 12. I wish you were here. I miss you every day. I want to make you proud. My throat tightened. How had it come to this? I realized then that the daughter who betrayed me was still in there somewhere. But she was lost. And if I wanted to save what was left, I had to be stronger than ever before. The next morning, Cassandra and I prepared the paperwork to file charges. She looked at me with a seriousness I hadn't seen since Sarah's funeral. "This is going to be tough," she said. "You're putting your daughter through a legal battle. But sometimes the hardest path is the only path." I nodded. "I don't want revenge," I said. "I want justice. For her, for me, for what we lost." She smiled sadly. "Then we fight." The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not just in temperature, but in atmosphere. Sterile walls, hard wooden benches, the low murmur of voices speaking in hushed tones, as if to not disturb the crushing weight of the truth that was about to be laid bare. Lily sat across from me, no longer the defiant girl I'd met in the kitchen months ago, but a pale shadow, her eyes darting nervously, a mask of arrogance quickly fading into something raw and vulnerable. I sat beside Cassandra, clutching the envelope, the symbol of everything that had come between us. When the judge called the court to order, my heart pounded. This wasn't just a legal battle. This was my daughter's future, and my own shattered dreams. The lawyer for the prosecution presented the case with sharp precision. Document after document showed Lily's actions in unforgiving detail. Forged signatures, fraudulent loans, intentional deception. When it came time for me to speak, my voice was surprisingly steady. I'm not here to vilify my daughter. I'm here because she broke the most sacred bond we share. A bond of trust between a father and his child. I paused, swallowing the lump in my throat. This betrayal cost me not just my savings, but my peace, my faith, and almost my hope. But more than that, it cost us our family. Lily's defense tried to paint her as a misguided young woman, pressured by the world, desperate to survive and succeed. But when the prosecutor confronted her with the forged signature of my late wife, she couldn't hide anymore. Her voice cracked. I didn't mean to hurt anyone," she whispered. "Didn't mean to," I thought bitterly. The judge's words hit hard. This court recognizes the complexities of familial bonds, but cannot overlook the gravity of deliberate fraud and deceit. Lily was sentenced to probation, restitution, and mandatory counseling. The room was silent except for the echo of the judge's gavel. After the verdict, I found myself outside, the sun warm but hollow on my skin. A part of me wanted to run after her, to hold her and tell her it was going to be okay. But I also knew something had irrevocably changed. The daughter I loved was no longer the same girl who used to sleep on my chest during thunderstorms. She was broken, and so was I. Walking back to my car, I thought about Sarah. I whispered into the wind. We did all we could. Now, we have to let go. That night, alone in the house, I sat with the envelope once more. The papers weren't just dead anymore. They were a roadmap of pain, but also a beginning. The days after the court hearing were quiet, too quiet. The house felt empty without her laughter echoing through the halls, even if those echoes had sometimes been harsh and bitter. I found myself in the old garden Sarah used to tend, kneeling in the dirt, hands aching from pulling weeds and planting new seeds. Life was stubborn. It fought through the cracks. It refused to give up. One evening, a letter arrived. It was from Lily. I unfolded the shaky handwriting, and the words struck me like a healing balm and a knife at the same time. Dad, I'm sorry. I see now what I did, how much pain I caused. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I'm trying to change. I want to be better. For you, for me, for Mom. I sat with the letter long after the ink had dried. Her words weren't perfect. They weren't excuses or demands. They were hope. We began to rebuild, slowly, painfully, imperfectly. Counseling sessions. Phone calls that started with silence but grew into conversations. She told me about the pressures I never saw, the mistakes she wished she could take back. I told her about the fear and the grief of losing Sarah, and then losing her too. One afternoon she came home. Not with another debt or surprise, but with a small bouquet of wildflowers. We sat together on the porch, watching the sunset behind the trees. I don't know if we can fix everything, she said softly. We don't have to, I replied. We just have to keep trying. And in that moment, I felt the fragile beginnings of forgiveness. Not because the past was forgotten, but because the future was still ours to write. The road ahead would be long. There would be setbacks, tears, and moments when everything seemed lost again. But there would also be love. Real love, the kind that survives betrayal, pain, and even debt. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge is not punishment. It's the courage to rebuild what was broken and to love again, despite everything.